Are you trying to? Beer?
I always have free baskets
Then you can just
that are,
take
that
that.
I just empty out and sit there.
Video unavailable. That's fine. It's just blocked because it's a live stream for students. Can we start the main meeting? I think.
I don't know if I can do it.
Do you know how to get in yet, John?
No.
All right, good evening, everyone. Great time. It's now 7:01 PM, February 27th, 2024. We will kick off the Montoursville Area School Board Work Session for today. If I ask y'all, please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Randy, roll call, please.
Mr. Albert,
Here.
Mr. Badger,
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower,
Here.
Mr. Gardner,
Here.
Mr. Pognick,
Here.
Ms. McCoy,
Here.
Mrs. Meyer, here, Mrs. Overheim,
Here.
and Mr. Young.
Here. All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming out here tonight. Moving on to recognitions and presentations. Ms. Snyder, you have anything that you'd like to share?
I talked about the strawberry smoothies last time, so I talked to them tonight, yeah.
They're fantastic. Thank you very much.
So we have that in the breakfast cycle, for all of the schools. So, and they can get like the free for like ever now, it's brilliant, so that's exciting. But yeah, so I want to bring you those, and then just give you a little update going on the upstairs cafe here at well, that's in starting, you know, like so we partnered up with Fox Den Coffee or Cold Brew, and so we're gonna be offering them to the students. So we're all really excited. Some students are gonna be helping prep and serve, and it will be a really good experience for them, and life skills, you know, every morning. So we're really looking forward to that. But that's all I have. So enjoy your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the public comments on agenda items. This is for residents and taxpayers. Come on up and voice their thoughts on items. No one in there today. Oh, we do. All right, come on up.
Yeah, hi, I'm Britt Bassett. I'm here to talk about potential closing Loyalsock Valley Elementary School. I warned the school board about what happens when it's tried this before. There's a big crap show about, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. My daughter was in Loyalsock Valley. This is a pretty quiet meeting tonight. There's maybe less than 20 people in the audience. You're going to go back to having hundreds of people ready to go to war if you try to close that school. Be aware of that. Don't kid yourselves. I attended one of the public meetings on the presentation for the options. Eliminating Loyalsock Valley would be a mistake for many reasons. It has the far larger campus than Lighter Elementary. The reason for eliminating it to simply avoid some relatively modest expenses would pale in comparison to what it would take to upgrade either the Lighter Elementary School or build a new school at the middle school, which are two of the options that are presented. There are no good places to put these kids. Lighter is far too small a campus for the kids that are there now. Half the green space is tied up with a Little League softball, baseball field. That Little League field, even if it were removed, you still wouldn't have enough space for the students you have there now. And if you put about, I think, remember, 60% more students, you're going to wind up with a very urbanized campus. One of the options is to put the school at the middle school. That again would consume all of the green space of the middle school, and the middle school would become like the high school is now, which is a disaster. This place is an urban campus that's right in the middle of a school district that is suburban and rural in nature. And this campus has no green space. Nearly all the green space at the high school was consumed to put in parking lots. And this school is like something you would find in an inner city, not something in a town of Montoursville. Doing that to either Lighter, they talk about adding a third floor of the Lighter school and adding more students. That undersized campus is a mistake. I've heard the excuse for why don't you put all the kids at Loyalsock Valley and expand that? That's got 10 acres. That's more than enough space for all the students. Well, the excuse for not doing that is having to bus the kids, reverse busing. Well, I get that. If that's a problem, then I strongly urge this board to not do anything in the immediate future other than to simply make the necessary repairs at Loyalsock Valley. I've heard about air conditioning, I think as mentioned later, and not do anything more than that. And then adopt a long-term plan to find a better place for an elementary school if, you know, wants to be in the borough or near the borough or wherever, but someplace that you don't have the busing issue of taking kids out of Loyalsock Valley. Take a long-term perspective and give the public time to react and participate in your decision-making. Thank you.
All right, anyone else in the room? Okay, we'll turn to our Zoom here. We have a bunch of folks attending tonight. If anyone is interested in making a comment, please raise your hand. We have Megan Hazel. All right.
Hi, I just wanted to share, I don't know if you've seen, we are doing a event for a former Montoursville area school district student, Ariel Mums, was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer. She has 2 little ones. We're doing a breakfast for the Easter Bunny with the Easter Bunny on March 23rd at the Bosley's in Montoursville to raise some money for her and her family. I just wanted to throw that out there.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else in Zoom interested? All right. Seeing none, that we will move on to item 2.2, presentation from Randy Apollo from Larson, Kellett and Associates.
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. I am Randy DiPaolo, as you mentioned, from Larson Kellett Associates. We're a local accounting firm. We are engaged to conduct the June 30th, 2023 audit of the financial statements and federal awards of Montoursville School District. And I was invited here tonight mainly to make myself available to you, the board, to answer any questions you may have about the audit or the audit process, and to quickly explain the 2 documents that are the main product of our audit, which I assume everybody has gotten a copy of that. Okay. So the first item is a letter report, which is a required communication from us, the auditors, to you, the board. It highlights certain estimates that were used in preparing the financial statement. Management calculates the estimates. We audit them, such as retirement and pension liability. And it also talks about in there that we had no difficulties with management in conducting or performing the audit, which is always a good thing to be able to report. So they're the 2 highlights that are in that letter. If anybody has any particular questions about that letter report, I'll be happy to talk about that or answer the question. Yes, sir.
Question I have is, this stuff is sort of Chinese to me when it comes to financial statements. It's not my expertise, but can you tell us that at the end of the year, we had a positive or negative in revenue? Like, do we have more revenue coming into expenditures going out, or?
Well, that's interesting. That's more of a management question, actually, but there's actually 2 sets of financial statements. So now I'm flipping over to the financial statements from the letter report I was just talking about. That's okay. So let me back up a second. The purpose of an audit is to render an opinion as to whether the financial statements are materially misstated or not. We issued an unmodified opinion, which means we believe that somebody could rely on these financial statements to make an informed decision. So within the financial statements, there's actually 2 sets of financial statements. One is prepared on the way you guys budget and keep your books, and the other is prepared on what's called the full accrual basis of accounting. And there's all kinds of schedules in here and reconciliations between the two. So it's depending on which focus you're looking at, the answer might be different. If you're looking at what are the full accrual or the government-wide statements, if you look on page, hold on a moment. If you look on page 7, that reports a positive change in what we call net position of $3,450,000. Now, that's not cash flow. That's not reporting revenue, cash in and out the door. That's taking into consideration accounts receivable, accounts payable, all types of liabilities. So that's why it's not necessarily easy to answer a cash flow question for you, because that's not how these are prepared. And the financial statements that are prepared based on the way you budget, still, it's not a pure cash receipts, cash disbursements. There are accruals that are calculated, payables, receivables. So I'm not sure how to answer that question other than to direct you to page, hold on a moment. Page 10 of the financial statements breaks the financial information out into funds. So you're probably familiar with the term general fund, capital projects fund, debt service fund, food service fund.
Right.
There's different columns reporting the activity in each of those funds. And in total, the general fund, the capital projects fund, and the debt service fund, if you look on page 10, reports a net positive of $2,358,000 roughly. And on page 13, that reports your food service or your proprietary fund, which reports a positive change or income of $310,000 roughly. But once again, none of those are a pure cash basis focus. So
Okay.
I don't know if that helps in answering your question or not.
For me, it does.
Okay.
Somebody wants to reword it or anything, they can go ahead. But
Well, I think Brandy could answer that maybe for us later.
yeah, might get along.
I have a presentation for the board meeting. Okay, for the next board meeting where I will go through it.
Is this board, next board?
And that's
For the next board.
Yeah.
So I did have a question too.
Certainly.
It was on the findings where you found material weakness and 202303.
Yep.
And I was curious, what was inaccurate reported in the ESSER funds?
So let's back up 1 second. So in addition to the financial statement audit, as I said, we also audit expenditures of federal funds. And we did give an unmodified opinion on the federal expenditures of federal funds also. The major fund that we audited was the COVID-19 Education Stabilization Fund, which accounted for about $1,400,000 of your total $2,881,000 of federal expenditures. So we did have findings related to that, as you just mentioned. And you were referring to 2023 003?
Yeah, 003.
Okay.
When it said there was material weakness, it was inaccurate ESSER report.
Yeah, so
I was curious what was inaccurate. I know it was untimely, so that was part of it, but I was trying to figure out what was inaccurate.
yeah, the amounts that were reported on it didn't agree to your general ledger reporting system, which is what we audit and where the numbers for the reports should come from. So the reports were prepared, they were reviewed, but the differences weren't caught. Specifically, what the differences were, I have in the work papers. I didn't bring the differences with me. So
So did So in comparison to our general fund to what was reported for the government, there was some difference between the two.
Yeah, when I say, when the reports that you have to file with the federal government should be based on your general ledger. If I said general fund, I apologize.
You said general ledger.
Okay. That's okay. So the general ledger are basically the books and records that Brandy keeps.
Right.
And there's actually a subsidiary reporting system there that keeps track of all the federal expenditures that Brandy and her team codes.
Right.
And that's what should be used to prepare the reports that are submitted to the federal entities or any other entity. Like I said, if you want to know what the specific reports were, what the differences were, I can provide that to you, but not here and now.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, and it's considered a material weakness because the federal government, the focus of an audit of expenditure of federal awards is on the controls that are in place over the expenditures. So because the review process didn't catch differences between the report that was filed and the general ledger, that could lead to any type of problem that, goes undetected. So that's why we bring it to your attention. Does anybody else have any other questions? Sort of jumped around a little bit. That was, no, that's actually fine. We covered the highlights. Basically the purpose of an audit, that we gave an unmodified opinion. We audited the federal funds, what program we audited, and we talked about the findings that you had a question about. So, but I'm happy to entertain any other questions because that's why I'm here.
I don't see any more questions. Thank you very much for your time and see you in June.
Thank you. If I may be excused.
You may be.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep. Have a good evening.
Just
Thank you.
just to give you a little bit of how the process works, to tell your, take your time, review it. I'm putting together a presentation for the board meeting. If you have questions, email me. I'll incorporate them into the presentation that I'm gonna put together for, well, it's almost together, but for the next board meeting so that we can have any of that worked out. It did represent a deficit, how we do our accounting for our budget, okay? So that way, it did represent a deficit of 1,731,000 and some change. But I will go back and remind you that last year it was either May or June, we did a transfer of funds over to capital because we knew we were gonna have some sort of building work to do. So we transferred 1.7 million over. So really, we come up at the end of the year with a deficit of $31,000. So what that is saying is that what we predicted on spending and the difference between the revenue and the expenditures was only a $31,000 difference. So, and I'll bring that to you at the next meeting. And, if you have questions, let me know. But, that kind of answers your question, I think there too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
I just stuck there.
No, that's great. Thank you.
I'll just add to your question, Mr. Meyer, we were also monitored on those federal funds by PD, so we're waiting for that letter to come in, so the issues there were cleaned up both with what she got in the audit and with what we were told we need to do with the monitor. So moving forward, that won't be an issue.
I sort of saw what happened.
Yeah. You'll have a very clear picture of what's happening.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Moving on to general agenda item. 3.1, approval of the following field trip requests for members of the professional staff. There's quite a few of them on there. Hope you had an opportunity to take a look at those prior to the meeting here. So when you're ready, I will take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions? Comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, very well. Personnel items, 4.1, approval of the following addition to the support staff. Mackenzie Riles, a paraprofessional. Placing Jill DeSant. When you're ready, I will take a motion to approve. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Questions? All right, all in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, the ayes have that as well. 4.2, approval of the following changes, additions to the coaching staff for 2023-2024 school year. Once again, when you are ready.
Second.
Any questions, concerns, comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Very well. Right, agenda item number 5, budget and finance, 5.1. Excuse me. Approval of the following financial institution to be used as depositories for the 2023-2024 school year. Jersey Shore State Bank.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All right, very well. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And one abstain. Mr. Young. 5.2, acknowledgement of the Montoursville Area School District's financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2023, as well as the related audit report from Larson Kellett and Associates that was attached. I'll take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Questions, comments, concerns? All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have that as well. Right, item 6, work session items for discussion, 6.1, discussion on 360 reviews for district leadership.
That's me. So this is something I actually brought up when I was on the other side of the table. So now that I'm on this side of the table, I'm gonna bring it up again. One of the things I think, first off, from a development standpoint for our leaders, doing 360 reviews. From the standpoint of having teachers review principals review administration, really helps in personal development. I also think it would also be enticing to be a district in which teachers have input into how their leaders are working. I don't know if any of you have ever done a 360 review. No, okay. So I'll go back to the beginning. What a 360 review is essentially is where you as a employee review leadership. So you're asked a series of questions. It's completely anonymous. You're allowed to comment. And what it does is it helps leaders develop personally in their leadership skills. So they offer feedback on how you're doing. It's all positive. It really is. And if it's done correctly, it really helps to elevate performance of the district on all levels. So there's a lot of engagement, people feel more, empowered. It's all around, every time I've been through it, it really is positive. So that you find out your strengths, your weaknesses, you know, what you need to perform better on. And what you do with it, so you ask a series of questions, how I foresee doing this, some are for leadership, some are as district as a whole. Like, so how are you engaged? Do you feel you're getting enough training? How's your work environment? Things like that. Then when you go to your leadership, is that, does your superiors support your development? Are they engaging? You can do it in one of two ways. You can do it whether it's internally, like via a Survey Monkey type thing, and do it, and they'll do an analysis, or there's tons of different outside vendors and ones that are particularly focused on education. So some of the things, so I wrote it down so I don't forget everything. So the pluses of this is it helps create development and leadership through a personal plan. So each one gets their individual feedback. It's averaged, right? So where do you fall in the skew? And then also, where do you fall in skew in relationship to your peers, right? So if you're a principal and at the different schools, it's like, okay, how are you doing in relationship to them? It also helps a little with the camaraderie. So let's say you have a weakness in communication, but when your peers, that's their strength, right? So it helps develop that. It expands self-awareness. Because, and it goes with strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes you aren't really aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are until you do something like this, or you see it from someone else's perspective. It's a reiteration of important messages, and what this means, it gives credibility to feedback. So somebody may have said like, oh, you know, you tend not to completely listen to me, and you sort of discount it. But when you see it in an aggregate form where there's a large group that may say, you know what, not as great at listening, you're like, oh, maybe I should work, right? It increases the likelihood of change when leaders go through it together. Again, it's sort of what I go back to, as you see amongst your peers where you're doing better, where you're not, it sort of helps elevate everyone. It has an impact on measurable outcomes such as employee engagement. I think this is huge. I think if you're a district that is actually doing something like this, you're more attractive as a district, and as a land of teacher shortages. I think this is something that when you look at a district and they see that the teachers and the principals, that everyone's engaged with each other, it's a much more attractive place. There's a voice, you know, and it's all anonymous. So it's not like, you know, oh, you're sitting there out. You also get to sort of get a real lens into what's going on. And then they become more effective as leaders because they engage in their direct reports, because you tend to, if you find out, okay, if I have X weakness, you're more apt to be sort of engaging with those beneath you, saying, you know, okay, what can I do? You tend to talk to them more. This I sort of already went over too. It goes beyond a single way of their group improvement, because when one does better, the other goes better, and they all elevate each other up. It needs to be ongoing. So this isn't a one and done, right? So this is something that, I mean, in my world, you do quarterly, you know, that may be an overstretch, right? So, but it's something that you do once or twice a year, because you do one in the beginning of the year, and this is for improvement purposes, right? It's sort of like testing, sort of like going to school, right? So you do it for improvement purposes, and so near the end of the year, do another 360 review. It doesn't take a lot of time, it really doesn't. You know, it depends on how much the employee wants to be engaged or wants to put in there, but it's like a 15-20-minute survey. You do it twice a year, you sort of get a pressure on how you're doing at the district. And it also improves the overall job satisfaction all the way around. Just because you're also developing, you have a conversation with your mentor, you may even work in like different leadership skills, invest in different programs. It's always interesting to find out what others' perception of you is, but sometimes you don't always see it. But I think overall it will be really good for the district. I feel like there's a need for it. I feel like my general sense a lot of times from the district is that there's fear of not being heard. And I just think it would be a positive step in the overall well-being of the district, and I really think it's something you could look into. Like I said, you could do it, something as simple as Survey Monkey, which doesn't cost a lot. I've done a ton of different Survey Monkeys, they do an aggregate too, so it'll do an analysis for you depending on what size of the platform. Or you can look at different outside entities also to facilitate it, so I honestly see no downside. It's always, I'm always up for personal development, so I'm a big fan. I think it helps you grow.
And this is separate,
Great idea.
separate from,
It's not a performance review.
yeah, separate from the
It's
evaluation.
not at all a performance review. It has nothing to do with a performance review, right? It's all about developmental and growth. And also it gives a sense of everyone, like almost like a camaraderie, right? Type of situation. And sort of, and it's good as a leader, I always found it good to know in that anonymous sense. Okay, I can speak my mind without fear of retribution as well. So, if you are dissatisfied, and you can have some great, listen, my last higher up, but his was always like through the roof. So it's also, if you're doing a great job, it's a good feeling. You know what I mean? You always find something, there's always something there. And it's all in how you implement it as well. So it can't be, oh, okay, it says that, but you don't do anything with it, right? And that's why it needs to be ongoing. Because you have to see if you're doing things. And there's always gonna be something that also gives you a feel of what's going on in the district. Because sometimes it's situational and it can be reflective. And so you get an overall sense of how the district is feeling. Sometimes it's not directly reflective, but most of the time it is. But that's what you can also do the more, like within that survey, a lot of times when you're doing it, just, you're doing it for your direct report, but you're also usually pepper in some questions on overall, like how you're feeling on like, do I feel, and they're very generic questions. It's like, do I feel like I have enough sufficient training in my workplace? Do I feel my supervisor listens to me? I mean, it's not, but it's meant to be a good thing. It's not performance related in any way, shape or form. It's very developmental, but it also gives you, I think, a good input.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar. This is a corporate world.
It's
But,
actually,
yeah,
they
it's
do it in
starting to
education,
trickle
they've
in,
done a
yeah.
lot in education, they're doing it a lot in education now. So you can find there's actually, outside entities that are purely focused for doing it in education. So, and there's been a lot of good feedback on, actually, if you look, like, there's a ton of different things, like the Harvard Business Review has done a lot of stuff on, there are specific papers that are written about doing it within educational systems and why it is starting to trickle in, because it has shown in the corporate world to be so successful, and that there is definitively a place within the educational
Yeah,
system.
when I was at, I have another name for it. I shouldn't use it. I'm going to, because I'm not gonna come up with the real name, superintendent's camp at, CASA, where I learned to be a superintendent, supposedly. I don't know how much it helped. They brought these up, but it was just very, look out, they're coming.
Right.
Because they're not big in Pennsylvania. They're so focused on evaluation at PDE that this isn't a discussion. I mean, certainly not opposed. The hiccups are gonna be, and to get it done right to start. I wouldn't know what a complete 360 review, the whole questionnaire would look like at all the different levels.
Right.
So I think we would need to engage at
An
least
outside,
initially
yeah.
somebody outside to help us kick it off and do it right. For me personally, I think it would be, I think for those of us that are in positions where the only feedback I ever get is lousy.
Right, see,
Um,
it could be really good, Dan.
It could be,
Wow.
they could double down on it.
The opposite way, so you could end
Yeah,
up like,
but
wow.
It would be
All I
good to
hear
get,
is-
yes, it would be good to get some feedback to know what I need to work on. You guys will give me some in my review, but you don't work with me every single day. As those around me, and you don't report to me, I report to you, so. It would be helpful for me personally and professionally to get some of that feedback. And the admin team probably could use some of that as I sit and visit the buildings and I get my ear bent quite a bit, and my guess is because they don't have an ear to bend all the time. So it might be helpful to have a place for them to do that. The other concern is going to be with our staff. Is it really anonymous? So another reason to go, at least initially, outside. When we use Google, Sebastian's watching everything they do, so. So, there would be hesitation in using something that we developed internally. And the idea of getting that aggregate report at the end, rather than necessarily seeing individual responses.
Yeah, and
would
how
be-
they, I was gonna say, and there's different ways to view it, and it's like in relationship to your peers, where you're doing your strengths, your weaknesses, and it'll show you like where are you strong at, where are you not strong at. And then, especially when you go to outside, to be honest with you, I tend to lean toward outside as well. It also, a lot of times puts in a developmental plan too, so like, okay, well, what can you do to work on this? Usually the person who is being reviewed sees all the comments, right? But it's blinded, so it's viewable by your subordinates too, which is good because they're looking down, but it just is viewed and usually in aggregate form. Comments are blinded because, some people can read comments, they know exactly, sometimes who wrote it. So, but they're blinded, but it gives you a good idea, and you can choose to blind the comments to the, person who's getting, it just depends on how,
So.
Yeah, because the other difference, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're
Go
fine.
ahead.
As far as the education in surveys go, do you know of any companies that do this?
Yeah, there's a few, and I have them written down at home. They're not my little book, I totally said about that. But yeah, there's actually quite a few. I was surprised there's as many purely based for education as there were. But I think because to your point, Dan, it's the family's seeping over, but I think it's seeping over in a good way because in corporate America, you can't go anywhere where you really don't have the 360 review.
Maybe even some of the comments and testimonials on some of the educational surveys that are done would be helpful.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, that's why I sort of wanted to bring it up to extra tests and see how everyone was feeling, if there was buy-in, and I will gladly go out there and do my due diligence, because you won't know if I will.
Yeah.
I can see where, sorry, Brenda,
No,
I can see where this 360 review would carry over it in a positive sense to the performance review. Because if they're working on developing weaknesses and focusing on things that they need to work on, that's going to show an improvement in their performance review at the end of the year, whenever that's done. So I see that that's a real positive thing in elevating everybody's performance at their job and in the job.
Yeah, part of the evaluation process is the principals have to establish goals. And those are always a challenge. What are the goals? This would give them something to work from. So although not
Tied completely.
it helps in that process. I think that could be beneficial.
Yeah, because it'll help identify strengths and weaknesses, and if you have some weaknesses, how can you do that better, and then you can goal that. So it's not essentially tied to it, but it gives you sort of a drawing board to work with,
And like you said, if people are bending your ear, this kind of gives them a way to say what they have to say, and then they've already said it. So
right? So maybe not as much. You're bending, I can't probably-
The other concern would be, and I'm sure it's built in, is weaponizing it against an administrator, because our business is a very personal business. It's
Right.
very people driven all the
Yeah.
way around, and in the corporate world, it's business, it's not personal. Here it becomes very personal, and when we start poking someone, so I'm sure there are things built into that.
And there are, and it's one of those things where you can choose to be as transparent to the outside as you want. Now, You should be transparent with regard to reports on right, yeah, because that's, I mean, that's, you sit down, you go over it, you know. But to your point, I mean, yeah, you don't want it to be something that has a retaliatory effect on it, but that's all in implementation, to be honest with you, that's not really like doing it and then how you choose to implement it, and I think if it's presented in that this is a positive, it tends to, and I think even those that may have put in negative feedback, if they feel like they're being heard and they see that there is improvement being made in those areas, that's all really, that improves their, you know, I mean.
I personally don't think there's a more effective feedback than from the bottom up,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's a great idea.
So do you want to get
I,
me some
Yeah,
companies and I
okay.
can reach out?
Yeah.
and I'll get more information from them and bring that to the next meeting.
Sharon, if you know, is there a mechanism that protects it from bleeding over into the performance evaluation?
Again, it all goes to implementation, Dave, to be honest with you, that if Dan is committed for it not to bleed over, it rests on the individual, do you know what I mean? And it can bleed over, but in a good way, to his point, where if there's something they need to work on, you know, you can
Use it to develop that type of
develop it,
plan.
right? But it doesn't necessarily, it's for personal growth. But I think that if there are deficiencies, that obviously is, which it shows in the work environment and the, like, and I guess in my world, it's work product, right? So but it really shouldn't have anything, it shouldn't affect performance review, and that lies on the administration of it, to be honest with you, and that has to be like either a pure commitment that it doesn't, right? But it also, Dave, I think it to the point of bleeding over to performance review, it may open eyes of things that may be happening you're unaware, you know what I mean? So as much as I like to say hard stop, no, it doesn't.
I just
Well,
want to
it-
make sure that we're careful that it doesn't, so that
It
it become
doesn't.
an issue.
Yeah.
As far as contractually.
There's why.
Right, and
That's the key.
yeah, and I.
Practice anonymous, you really can't use it to factor into eval, can you? Because you can have anybody saying anything about you, and then she looks at that eval and.
Oh, you're
factors it
talking
in.
email gone down.
Yes.
Are you talking, so I was going upward, right? Are you talking eval going down? Again, I would hope not, but it's anonymous, and the only way you could even figure out, Dave, is if somebody writes something and they can tell.
And you said about blinding the comments or.
Yeah, I don't think we could share individual comments.
So he could probably, from being the person that would be helping developmental growth, like he could probably should be able to read the comment. I was always able to read the comments, right? I'll be honest with you, if you're a good leader, you're not going to take that offensively, right? Because it's all for personal development. If we feel that that's it, you can blind them, and Dan may be the only one who is reading them, right? So that he gets a sense of district, and also help, and you just get the aggregate scores where you have strength, weaknesses, and like where, because certain questions are leaning toward what's a strength, like a communication, like you'll get like 5 different questions on communication, and you can sort of see where you scored on each of them, and that gives you an overall communication score. And this depends on what vendor and whatnot we go with on how you build that out and what you want it to look like. But yeah, going downward, unless somebody like writes a book, to be honest with you, you usually can't tell. I mean, there are people that do that, don't get me wrong, but unless somebody writes a book underneath it, there's really no way to tell, because it's multiple choice. It's not, free form writing.
It's 1 through 5. Yeah, I pulled up a few here.
Yeah,
And
so,
it's gotta be because of contracts, it's gotta be complete.
Right.
I
That
think
was my-
contracts.
That's my main.
Well, you
concern
can
with
make
the
it so
traffic.
that they
Act
can't,
93
they
agreement.
can't comment.
Yeah.
So the way to truly want it is just we say, listen, we can't have any no free text.
Yeah.
So you just make it so then there's no way to find it out.
I'm certain these companies have.
Yeah,
They
and I was gonna
thought-
say,
they
they've
thought
done the
this.
whole
They
education
thought
thing,
this.
so. With a piece of paper.
Thank you.
I will say, and just the few articles, that I've looked at, and I pulled this one up, because I was looking for it, earlier. But the only time I've seen it really go bad is when people don't use it to improve. And then staff looks at it as they're not being heard, and why fill it out anyway?
But
So-
again, that goes to administration.
Right.
Right.
That's
So
what,
it
so
has to-
that's where, the only place that I've read and seen that it has actually went bad.
Yeah.
So like, that's, yeah.
It all goes down, yeah, I was gonna
Going back to what
say,
you
yeah, I
said.
was gonna say, the only time that it gets to negatives is if they don't implement it. If you just do it because you say you wanna do it.
Right.
Right, like you're just doing it for face and just saying, oh, we do 360 reviews, and then they get them and no one follows up and no one does anything with them.
Right, and I just pulled up here in this one, that's one of them, that's like the only downfall.
It is, and that's basically lack of implementation of doing it.
Like, are you asking the questions because you really want an answer?
Well, no, and it's, are you not using your results for personal development, and are you not being accountable to use it for personal development? So what happens is if somebody gets with 360 feedback and they look at it and be like, oh, I don't do this well, right? Like, or this is a weakness of mine. They do literally nothing with it. They never look at the 360 review again. They never have a conversation or whatnot. That's when it goes bad, and that's a top-down type thing. So is this district going to embrace it? And then if it is, then it filters through. So. And there's people,
So are these improvements done as a whole? The goal is to do it as a whole, or is it, or whoever has the issues, are they being?
no, you do it as a whole, because there's.
You do it as a whole and then you just build off of it. I mean, if you see an issue, I mean,
Yeah.
no different than anybody sitting around here, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna, well, yeah, I've done that
As
before.
perfect as you think you are,
Right.
everyone is going to come back with a weakness.
Right,
So-
but as a whole, that's how you communicate it to everyone as a district, and then you build off of that and improve
Oh, absolutely.
together.
Right, yes, and that's what they say, it's like usually like you find that even as an individual group, the overall district would improve, right? So it has a trickle effect type thing is where if somebody, and also like you think, if somebody is getting the 360 review and they're like, oh, I'm gonna work on this, and you're talking, you're like, oh, that's a good idea. Good thing.
So Sharon, this is
Sorry,
really,
you're so amused by.
Sharon, this is really kind of a tool for personal development
Yes.
in the
it is.
workplace.
Yes, but it, that's exactly what it is, but
I mean, I think
what it ends
covers,
up
it's broader
doing
than that, but
is,
it
has a
really
broader,
is.
it has a broader effect. It's a personal development tool that has a broader effect, all for the good,
Mhm.
unless it's just not to Brandy's point, unless
Yeah.
you just do it and don't implement it. But there's really no negative to it, and I also think like, to that point, with the shortage of teachers, to be a district that actually has something like this in
Mhm.
place, I think is a huge bonus. I think, if you have your support staff, your teachers, I mean, in doing it district-wide from a supervisory type situation. And then also getting the feeling like when you feed into it, you put in like with the district environment as a whole, and listen, you have great scores, like who doesn't want to go work for that district, right?
And the only other downfall, and this might go back to the administration part, if the individual chooses not to take advantage of the information in front of them, of what their peers are seeing or not seeing as far as their opportunity to develop, that might be the other, but that really kind of falls under the administration.
That's the bosses.
But in looking at it, but in looking at it, it might be best to take a team approach to it. for the administration to kind of hold each other accountable, everyone set goals,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. It just to look, I mean, I briefly looked at this very briefly to see, exactly what it was. And, I belong to SHRM, and that's where I did all my research. And, they have a lot of suggestions on how to go about it, and some of it is more group.
And then that's the
Related.
thing is, because sometimes even as a team, you all may have a common growth factor, right? Like, so that's why it's also nice to do it at a district level, to like employee engagement stuff, so that there are those commonality things that as a team, you're all working toward. So it gives you, to your point, individual growth metrics that you would work at and take personal responsibility for, but then it also gives you can get metrics like if you think, when you're looking at the district side of it, where you're asking those general questions that as a team they can work on. So then that also may push that person who isn't doing the individual growth
Mhm.
to do more as you're sitting with the team.
Yeah, and I like the group idea because certainly they can use it individually, but the group idea, when we have that opening meeting kickoff and we're setting the tone for the year, we're outlining our goals, this is what we're going to work on. To have one of those come out of the 360 review,
Mhm.
people sitting there, that was something I commented on. That was,
Yeah.
then they begin to believe in what we're trying to do. So
Well, and it helps identify things like you may have something that you perceive as a weakness and it may be real or perceived, and then you get a 360 back and what you may have thought was
Mhm.
doesn't come
Doesn't,
back
yeah.
as that, and it's something completely different. So it also helps you build out what you want to happen for the district. Like if you put in do I feel like and I'm just throwing this one out there, there's another one implication there. Do I feel as I'm getting enough training on the job, right? And that comes down at a low score, but you felt like I give them, a ton of training all through the year. There's the perceived versus reality is that you may feel like it's enough training, but that particular subset or group does not feel like it's enough training, right? So that's one of the things that you can be like, oh, I didn't realize that they wanted more training.
that's a tricky one because they get a whole lot of training.
Right, so that's why I said I'm just throwing this out there, or maybe too much training.
It's what we're required.
Right, so, but yeah, I was just throwing that out, because that's always a common question, it's like, it's like, there's like things like, do I feel like I, supported in my career growth, and, that gives you a sense of like, oh, my people feel empowered. So there's, and you can pick and choose what questions you want in there, and things that you may sort of want to find out, you can put in there and get a general sense if you don't know where it's going. But then that does help you plan for the year and what your goal setting for the year is. Again, there's really good time.
And the one thing I like about the team approach too is that it also offers the opportunity for, say, a whole department to be supportive of each other. And say 2 or 3 have strengths that balance out weaknesses in 2 or 3 other people, and then this group can really help this group learn how to develop and overcome those weaknesses.
Well, and the team part of it does, it produces accountability as well.
Mhm.
So then there's an accountability of like, someone's slacking, someone's pulling
Mhm.
more weight than the other. I'd keep that one, did that.
That's good information, though. Thank you very much for bringing that.
Very welcome, and I'll get that stuff for you.
Not to remind me that ever. Freaking encyclopedia.
All right, anything else on that topic before we move on?
No, I think that was very good.
Yep, that was outstanding. Thank you very much. All right, 6.2, discussion of elementary school 1 versus 2. Now, just a caveat here, this is discussion. It's going to center around the information that we will need in order for us to make a proper decision on this. We're not obviously making a decision tonight, but what are some things that we've seen already? What are some things information that we may need moving forward? I think Mr. Charlini has, he can kind of recap some of the stuff that we've done in the past and a few of the things that he's came across recently. And then we can follow the discussion from that.
So you have the 2020 feasibility study. It's been a few years. Because PlanCom's gone, you don't have to do another feasibility study to enter any kind of project. So talking with some area superintendents, they have engaged Site Logic, which I sent to the proposal of what they will do. And the first phase of that proposal was to basically check on COA, check that feasibility study, go through that, update it, and see where we are facilities wise, only at the two elementaries. It's not gonna look at middle school and high school. We don't have to do anything at those. It would only focus on the two elementaries. From there, they would stay on. The second track of that was 3 to 4 months to help you come to some type of decision as questions come up. What is it that you need? I'm sure we're gonna have some questions that we have tonight. I've heard some already. They'll help us, again, another set of eyes on this, to come up with numbers and savings if you close it, the problems with putting it all in this little space here, as we heard tonight. The cost of keeping both. If you don't sell it, the cost of maintaining it. I know those are some of the questions that you've had. They can answer those a lot better than us. They have a lot more knowledge there. The other part of that is GSL, that we talked to this past week. They go out and seek grant money. And there are 3 pots of money, that they would go after. The RCAP or RACP, sorry, it's changed names. The RACP funds, that's one they're good at. That's one that they are engaged with like the CTC with to go after. They would look at $5 million there. It is matching. So if you get that money, 5 million that comes in, you have to match it with 5 million. What I didn't know about those funds is they can sit for 7 years, untouched. So it's not forcing you into a quick decision on what to do here. So that was good news. There is no reason not to engage with them. Their structure is kind of like an attorney's. They don't get money unless they get money for us. So they have a percentage they would take off of that grant money. The other pots of money are the 2 improvement programs out of the state, which I had sent you, the environmental one and the infrastructure. They could work some kind of combination to get us to that 5 million figure in grant money. And why that's important is it limits your borrowing money in any future project. So those guys, it makes sense for me to engage. Doesn't cost us anything once they get the funds. And they will stick with us throughout the program. The reporting and such, so we don't run into some of the stuff we ran into with the federal funds. The Site Logic makes sense because it was not to exceed number of 12,000. And it is another set of eyes on this to help come to a decision on what to do here with our elementaries. And answer those questions as they come up. They are engaged with Bellefonte, who they've decided to close 2 elementaries and build a new one. We're not in a position to do that financially. They have to sprinkle that building, so they know the costs with water towers or storage tanks. They know the costs of that to be able to help us really take a good hard look at everything that's needed to either keep both or consolidate down to one.
Can I ask a question? Are you able to come up with a rough idea of what it would take if that building, if it didn't have employees, if it was kept at a certain temperature, how much we would pay in insurance and how much we would pay for oil, like it's oil out there, right? Things like an electricity. Are we able to come up with something like without having that company do it? Is that something NAFO can do along with branding?
It's possible to to come up with that, but last time there was a lot of distrust in the district officials coming up with those numbers. And I just don't want to put our employees, as you already heard tonight, there's a war coming. I don't want to put our employees necessarily in the middle of that. It wasn't fun. I was in the middle of that. Yes, we could, but there are going to be questions about the figures we provide.
I had a question. So I had gone and looked at Site Logic and noticed that they also do funding. Is there any reason we're going with two different companies rather than just under one umbrella? Because I saw that they can do something similar to what the other companies do, and I just didn't know if there was more logical sense to keep it under one umbrella rather than two.
The three funds are very political. I was told the two construction ones from the state are going to Pittsburgh, Philly, and Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. The GSL folks have the former budget secretary for Governor Wolf, so he knows the ins and outs and still has the connections to play the politics to go after that money. Site Logic does not, and when I talked to them about that, they said they would assist in grant writing.
Okay. So they wouldn't-
I don't know what their definition of assist.
Okay, that's what I
Yes,
just, I saw that
Yeah.
and I saw that there were two companies engaged and I wasn't sure.
GSL does the whole process. Might need to get signatures. That thing you signed for LICO CTC. That came from GSL.
Okay.
That was the extent of our efforts there, so. And of course, the RACP money is very,
Right.
very political. And I was surprised that school districts were eligible for that, but with PlanCom being gone, this is kind of what they're using to fill that gap.
From the RACP perspective, I asked this question in an email. I'm not sure if I got a response back or not, but that money needs to be set aside on the budget prior to RACP application. Is that, I'm sure that probably hasn't happened for us because this is new to us that we could do this, but do the GSL folks help with that, or is that something that we need to do?
You're talking about the next open window.
So in order for you to be RACP eligible, in order to submit the application, it has to be a line item on the state's budget, whether or not you use it or approved. And I think it's good for, I think it's that 7-year window, a 7-year window. So it gets put on there, and then when we're ready to apply and the window opens, but it needs to be put on that line item first.
So they're opening a window that will take care of
We can
that.
put-
They're opening a window before the election. Because they need votes.
I was just gonna say, question.
And we can keep going, back to that too, it's my understanding. We can keep going back to ask
Every time it opens,
every time the window opens.
then we can build on it. Then we get $1 million, and then we get 2 million, you know, you can build on it as long as nothing's left over 7 years.
But they were pretty confident in getting, especially between the three programs, getting us to 5 million.
Any other thoughts?
So what keeps us from, when you say about the maintenance of the building out there in case we do close it? So what are the thoughts of, seeing if there's any interest out there? I know you had mentioned about having to get a appraisal done, whatnot. You know, not that it would be closed, but in the same token, it'd be kind of nice to be able to have some feelers out there of anyone who might be interested in it. And for whatever purpose, if it could be a beneficial thing back to the district with whoever does purchase it. I don't know if there's any avenues to go that way or not.
So I started putting out some feelers there. There are a couple groups. I can't get into,
No, right,
but
but
it's real estate. I think that's one of the things we can. There are a couple groups. How serious they are, I don't know. They don't really know our timeline.
and I think
but there
another
was some
thing,
interest.
another thing that's really vitally important, we've already been emailed on this, is the class sizes. I think that that's really super important that we make sure that we maintain, especially at that younger level. I mean, anytime you're only dealing with 15 to 20 students versus dealing with 25 to 30, that makes a huge difference in their growth development. So, you know, I think that's a huge thing to look at.
Mhm.
And those we can get projected as well.
Right. No doubt about it, there's, you know, no need for a war whatsoever, because like, you go back and look and see what this facility has done, and, you know, the Band-Aids that were put on prior to that are from previous boards, from previous, you know, people within the community that, you know, decided not to make choices that probably should have been made 30, 40 years ago. So that scene looks a lot different today. I think as a community, we're well aware of the outreach of people that want to make sure that things are done that benefit the kids and do what's right. And I've said this before, that I have no intent of wanting to close down a building. Just to close it, it has to be for all the right reasons, and mainly for the students and for the community as a whole, if we're in the future. I mean, because we put ourselves into a bind with this high school from the standpoint that we've let things go way too long with the old school and put too many Band-Aids on it and didn't address the things that needed to be addressed. And when I look at the Valley and I look at the later elementary, we're closing in on those times of both of those schools needing quite a bit of work. And if you don't do it correctly, and especially where interest rates are now, you know, what is the long-term effect that we're going to put on this district, and that's why, you know, we're looking into it the way we are. A couple other comments that I was thinking of is the existing cost to keep each building open. That's a huge one, like, you know, as far as the what it costs to maintain in the winter. I mean, it's a lot different here in town than it is out there. You know, as far as how many kids we have out at the Valley versus the kids we have here at Lighter, I know that that's already been put out there. It's just as a refresher to see where those numbers are. You know, it has to be spot on, and it has to be for all the right reasons, not because somebody just wants to close it or somebody thinks that it's time. You know, it has to be concrete. It has to be a legitimate reason for moving forward as a community and to better the community. And, you know, hopefully we get the right people in place that can do the research and have the community's trust in it.
And to your point, one of the things that I want them to look at is getting the cost that would be, that the buildings, like looking at both of them, how much it would cost to get both of them completely up to date, not just Band-Aid, right? So that's one of the things in the differential between one or the other shutting down and making sure that we're not just Band-Aiding and extending the other, right? So to your point, like both of the schools need a lot of work. And I feel like I don't want to do a half upgrade to one just to keep it open and a half upgrade to another, right? Just to say, just to satisfy those needs and then up in the same predicament with both the schools again, right? So I think that we need to have like the cost of what it would be with those enrollment numbers as well. We're completely upgrading those, and they're gonna be different because those studies were done 2 years ago now, and now we're at different interest rates again, and building materials have continually gone up. They haven't gone down really.
Well, I'd like to take into consideration, the insurance out at the valley. And I think that,
Well, if you do the upgrades, my
Right. Those are-
assumption is putting water towers in and getting the sprinkler system and stuff in, because that's the
renovation
biggest
of-
problem.
takes us out of the grandfather contract. that we're
Right, yeah, the
grandfathered in.
sprinkler system takes it out.
If you were to do something to the sprinkler system, this is what I think that, I mean, the public doesn't, these are things that we talk about, like the water system and the insurance, but
Right.
there's just not a full picture there for them to understand all of our consideration, the things that we have to consider.
Right.
And so I'd like to see all that, but I mean, I'd like to see all that written down for us. And Dan, you think this is what GSL would do?
Site logic,
Site logic will do that. GSL's doing
Yep.
funding.
site logic will take care of taking that feasibility study and then focusing on the elementaries, knowing the insurance piece, really telling us what we need
And
to
the
do
water.
at both buildings, yeah.
So what are they looking at? The, essentially two options. There's keeping both open and getting them completely up to date, or closing one and expanding on the other. There's really like, we're at two options there.
Or the
There's
third
only-
is you just maintain, I mean, that's still out there,
Well, when you had said we had
That's
7
just
years.
kicking the
I was
can down
kind
the
of
road.
liking that.
yes.
And that has to stop. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
tired of kicking the can down.
The more you
But
kick the
we're
can
sitting-
down the road, the more
That's
expensive.
why we're
it
sitting
gets.
here making the decision, and it wasn't made 4 years ago. So, there's me just saying that. But it has to, it can't keep maintaining, or it's gonna end up like the high school, and you're gonna have to rip
Yep.
down both the buildings or one of the buildings and build a new one, and it's just gonna cost you money.
You'll get to a tipping point.
Yeah, so you can't just maintain it. It needs to, both need to be completely fixed, and we need no cost differential. And to the point of like, okay, if that building sits, how much does that cost, right? If you do close it. Like no one buys it, I mean, granted, there's the 10 acres there, but that's across the district, right? I don't know. Lot
Yeah.
size and moment.
Yeah, I mentioned something. Are we expecting or trying to forecast how many migrant children are gonna be coming in our district? It's gonna happen. We all know it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
We see
we
that
have
every
it.
minute across the border. Other school districts are seeing it. Other states are getting overwhelmed by it. I don't wanna see us consolidate new space if we're then gonna need additional space. So that's one thing to factor. I don't know how to predict that, but it's definitely gonna happen. Just another small thing. I think there's about 25 of the parents at the Valley that are dropping their kids off and picking them up and stay, so it's inconvenient, so for them if they're consolidating, others, they're dropping off, picking up their work reasons and stuff, so they kind of have to do that, so that's gonna be a big negative thing about.
Yeah, and that opens up a whole discussion on transportation, what do we have to add routes?
So that was gonna be the other thing, is can they tell us an estimate of? Because my thoughts are, is if you open later, you put in a young kid route, so they're not on the bus as long. Do you know what I mean?
We
So it's
talked
yeah, so you put middle and high school together. And you do the elementary school. And what's that cost? Having to,
You're talking about separate bus runs.
yeah, 2 separate bus runs. Because, so you don't have those kids, because that is a concern, having the littles. Go down that way.
Dan, if we would close the Valley School, how many employees would lose jobs? Because I can't think that we would be able to assimilate all the employees out there in other places in the district. So how many people would be losing jobs and employment if we went to one school.
If you keep class size the same, I can't, I mean, there's like only a little bit of redundancy. I would hope the head count wouldn't be that huge.
Yeah, you would hope you could do that through attrition retirement.
Yeah, you just don't, when people retire, you just
Don't
don't
replace.
replace until construction's done. And also, and exactly, so to your point, is keep that class size high. That's
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah, me
Big,
too.
big
Class
one.
size is a big one.
A lot of that would depend upon like the timing of it all, as far as retirements are concerned,
Right,
that kind of thing. Like, you know, you're gonna have years where you're gonna have more people retiring than others. So, you know, keeping an eye on that and seeing, you know, how that develops, you know, in 5, 6 years, the projection, if these people throw that into consideration or research that or look into that to see, say that in 7 years, there's the potential of 10 to 12 employees potentially retiring. You know, like you say, it's not an easy thing to be dealing with, but you know, I certainly hope as a community, we have learned that we cannot just put Band-Aids on things and we cannot continue to just kick a can down the road. And you've all found that out in 2016, what that felt like. So you wait another 10 years down the road to do something, and where are you then? Just gotta have your facts together, and you gotta have the community on board and make sense of it.
I think-
Present it in a manner that's
it's just, it has to be as
Understood.
transparent as possible, right? There's like, no, to Brenda, to your point, the grandfathering of insurance, I mean,
These are things they just.
yeah, the public doesn't know that, like, that building can't get insured by any outside entity. So now you do. So
Well,
that's like
yeah,
a consideration.
Clarify, like it's a complete renovation would take us out of that grandfathered insurance, right?
Any renovation.
Isn't it, well, complete renovation, I heard that from what I heard during the tour that we took, you can do sections and still be grandfathered into the insurance.
If we touch the electrical, we're not grandfathered. Like, we can't do, like, you could maybe update cabinets or something, but you can't.
You get into
But that's
systems,
just still doing
Yeah.
Band-Aids, you're just still,
when you get into systems, they're gonna require
The,
sprinklers on that.
right,
on that
Okay,
building.
I don't think that I completely understood that on the tour, and I mean, I understand.
Yeah,
the
and
Band-Aids and the
I don't
things,
either.
but-
There's a percentage that you go over that triggers something, and I don't know what that is, and we can
That'd be
get,
good to
we can
know.
get those answers.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, for whatever you do out there, when you initially start to do it, that's when the snowball begins.
right, and you
And-
don't know what's behind those.
And it's just with the building that is as old as, I mean, I walked through it and, you know, like, it was just like I was a kid walking through that school, you know, nothing's really changed a whole lot. You know, in the, you know, Joe and them have done a good job out there of maintaining that building and doing what needs to be done to keep it going. So, you know, but the roof system, all those things, you know, no gym, you know, that's something else. It's hard to believe that was a school out there that for as long as it's been there has never had a gym, never had a place. They got to continue to utilize it and use it as a cafeteria and a gym class. So, you know, there's just a lot of things there that we're holding on to that needs to change one way or another.
From the insurance perspective, are we at a point, or will there be a point in the future where the insurance may not want, would they decide not to renew based on the condition of the
They
building?
could, and we've discussed that. You're looking at a whole bunch of trailers coming in somewhere and well, we're not allowed to occupy that building if it's not insured. So we're at the mercy of the insurance company on
AI, when we eventually introduce it, you see that change in class size at all? making things efficient more.
AI is,
AI question, less teachers. I hope that's not the case, but just throwing it out there.
I can't imagine the little ones that route, as they get older, yeah, that's a possibility. We're looking at co-ops to start getting kids out in the workforce their senior year rather than in the building. That could reduce staff and reduce your costs. AI is an interesting one. We're going to have to eventually develop some policy on that. That we could be here weeks talking about AI. It changes. We have to change every couple of hours.
So how long is it going to take Site Logic to do if we decide to engage them, right?
So there are 3 to 4 month engagement.
So I guess my question, is 3 to 4 month engagement, it'll take them 3 or 4 months to do the analysis, or they'll do the analysis and then we can discuss with them over a 3 or 4 month time frame.
Yeah, their analysis would be done, I would guess within a month in talking to them.
Okay. That's what I was just
And then
thinking,
that
time frame.
second task kicks in,
Okay,
where they start getting answers to these
okay,
questions that we're throwing out here
okay.
tonight.
Right.
And that will take them a little bit of time. And the other is they'll help us push that question here. The renovation of two, like a real renovation of 2 buildings, not where you spend
Band-Aid.
10 million out here and you see no change.
Right.
They'll kick them a little to get us some better costs.
That's the other thing that I was curious about
Yeah.
as well.
They would actually, if we're satisfied with them through this, if we decide to go that route. And we're all satisfied with them, they would then become the lead on overseer of the
Right.
of 8 projects or both projects, depending on what we do. So they would be the kind of construction management.
I noticed that. I saw that and I was curious, like, if that's like the whole part of the purpose of doing the first half.
Yeah, test them out and get their eyes on this from the very beginning. And if we continue with them, that would be through pre-design all the way up through opening the building. Or both buildings.
And they'll give us like, so can they also do like, if we're looking at, 1, 2, 3 projects, like estimated time of completion, right? So that's another thing we have to factor in.
Yeah,
It's like
the whole,
construction,
the timelines, yep,
Like,
they orchestrate that. They also will do the energy savings,
I saw that.
which can be tied into this as well to get you. So we definitely have HVAC projects, work projects, depending on what we do. They take some of that money and they guarantee you savings that's applied to the construction.
I saw they also had like solar stuff on there.
Yeah.
And like you can apply for grants, which
You can.
could help with energy efficiency and stuff like that.
You can. There are lots of ways to reduce, it's still going to cost money.
Well,
yeah.
But that's
They have
the
ways to
maintaining
reduce that.
part of it.
And through grants and money we have in the capital fund, we can really reduce what we borrow on a project and not take on as much debt.
So will they also do, just keep asking more questions now, will they also do cost analysis? Because I know they're very energy focused, I noticed. Will they also do the cost analysis of what we will save by redoing the buildings from an energy perspective? Because I would think it's probably fairly substantial at like Wilson Valley and later, because they're older buildings and probably are
They will.
very efficient.
And I will tell you, I was duped on that here at the high school project because what wasn't taken into account was air conditioning the entire building. So where you're saving, because your envelope's a little tighter in the winter, you're spending
Yeah.
now because you're air conditioning an entire facility where you weren't before.
Well, if I'm doing like an energy consumption, I would think that they would take that into account.
I would hope.
Right, so well, I would
I
make
would
sure,
make
I
sure
would
they
make
did.
sure that that's up.
Because this was supposed to be this huge savings and we saved some, but not what we were expecting because
Right. The big building.
it's air conditioned.
And we're definitely air conditioning the elementary school.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Just putting that one out there. See what we can get for all the volume of the. Resale. Yard sale, that will start raising some capital fund.
I think we got a lot of good stuff here. You wake up in the middle of the night, come up with something else, shoot me an email and I'll add it to the list. Are there any other questions on site logic or anything else to add?
I would like to add the GSL point that they don't get paid unless we get paid is huge. Most other companies that do that take a hefty chunk regardless. If you get the grants or not, so that's a big win there. I think.
What's the percent? Anywhere from 12 to 15%. But then you get them. What's important there, it sounds like a lot, but you get them through the end. You're also getting money that you didn't have. Either.
You said that they manage like, because obviously you get a chunk of money and then you also have to do the federal pullbacks or like that. So funds,
Yeah. So,
they manage
Here's
that.
where we got caught up.
Reporting that.
Most of this stuff is reimbursable. You spend it, you submit.
Right, right.
When we got caught up with Essers, it was the same thing. It was reimbursable. You spent it, you did your quarterly reporting, you got your money. We did a final report. Got all our money up front. So they will avoid a lot of those types of things. So it's a reimbursable, you don't get the chunk of money, it sits there. And as you spend, you put in your quarterly reports and you reimburse. They help with those, the reporting
That's what I get.
and the final report and yeah.
Good.
So I will have both of those proposals on the March 12th agenda. For you to take action on. And if you have any other questions about them in the meantime, let me know. And thank you for the discussion.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much. That was great stuff. All right, moving on to the final public comment. Excuse me. I'm not getting over a cold. The final public comment of the day, 3 minutes on pause for residents and taxpayers to comment on issues, agenda items, topics, things like that. Anyone in-house?
So a couple thoughts. I would encourage pursuing the Giza projects. I have been involved in Giza projects. And that is a great way to pay for energy, heating, ventilation, air conditioning system. And it's a good payback, a good system. It costs you basically nothing up front. You're guaranteeing the savings to the company and they have to, if they don't make the savings, they eat it. And I have the project I'm at, the company that's involved has not generated the savings yet. So it's a great, no risk to the school to do that. They're very popular in schools. The thought about Band-Aids, I understand not want to do Band-Aids in the schools. But I would say, again, you know, my strong opinion is that you should look really hard at, if you're not going to do Band-Aids, you ought not to do it either school. And you ought to look hard at doing a new school. And I think you need to take your time to do that and find a site, because neither site works. You don't have any existing properties that work for a new school. None of them. But as far as Band-Aids in the schools, I will tell you, I was involved, Dan, auxiliary person was involved here during the last project. I got involved after construction started. When Torresville tore down a 200,000 square foot of high school that was only 30 years old. And just you see this Little Sauk Valley, these block buildings last 50 to 100 years. And yes, there were some problems, which Dan and I toured the site, and there were window problems, this and that. But the Loyal Sauk Valley, the structure, the concrete floors, the cinder block walls, the framing for the roof are like new. And that's true for later as well. The site is in perfect condition. The asphalt's in good condition. Grounds are good. The well's fine. They just spent some money on the new wells. So you have to look at the entirety of the structure. And it was really difficult for me to be here at the high school during demolition of 200,000, that's 5 acres of building. That could have lasted another 50 years. And yes, the old part was from the 1930s, and that was older. That again, parts of that were okay. But when you think about, geez, tearing down a building, you're gonna be tearing down buildings, one or the other, that are gonna last another 30 to 50 years. Just because the HVAC is bad, the roof needs replaced, you're gonna be wasting a lot of money to tear them down. As far as selling buildings, which Dan pointed out, and he's right, you don't really do most schools don't do well at selling old buildings. They go for a song. So the idea that we're gonna sell the schools and make men, you're not. You're gonna sell them for pennies in the dollar. So a lot to think about, and I commend all of you for sitting on a school board. I think about it, I have not done it. It's not an easy job. But don't get run down the track. Sorry, that's my time. Don't get run down the track with some, well, I didn't want to take it for time, but don't get run. A lot of school boards, and I'm an engineer, I work for sewer authorities, water authorities, and public entities. A lot of decisions get made for the wrong reason. Just like Dan said, you need to think through the whole picture here. And I think what happened is high school, the old high school, the decision to replace that and build a new one was made for the wrong reason. And I think the school rushed that, well, I definitely rushed in the new construction when the old board was about to get booted off. And the superintendent at the time accelerated construction so that project could not be stopped without costing the school district millions of dollars. And that's the way it was done, and it does. And the school board, I thought at the time, made a difficult but correct decision to keep building a new high school because they were too far gone. It would have cost the school district, in my opinion, millions of dollars to have ended those construction contracts. Materials were already paid for. They were sitting in trailers, job site. But that project was rushed to the point where the school district, the new board, before they got elected, had no choice but to continue the project. And that tore this district right down the middle. And that rift exists today, this day. So think hard about what you do here. And I'd, be glad to offer whatever insight I have from that previous project. Thank you.
Mr. Bassett, I'll probably be reaching out because I don't want to go to war. The district does not want to go to war with the community. So we'll be in touch. Thank you. Yep, thank you.
Ron Snell, Lower Manor Road. One thing I want to bring up and remind the board, I went to every one of the meetings where we reached out to the community to get input on whether the community would like to see the valley closed or keep it open and include air conditioning to the valley and lighter and a few other things. The consensus was in all those meetings was keep the valley open. There was parents that came to those meetings and whether anybody likes it or not, those parents spoke up and where they felt that country kids are raised different than town kids. And they are trying at that young level to lead their kids in the right direction. And they want to keep them at the Valley as long as they can before they come in and get in a different atmosphere. So I just want you to remember that the community does want the Valley to stay. And I have one other thing. I don't know if everybody's aware or not, but an alumni on Saturday was killed in an ATV accident, John Iron. Antlers on the Water is having a benefit March 23rd for his family. Two of John's sisters are servers at the Antlers, and all the proceeds will go to the Iron family. And they've had a lot of heartbreak in their family. John's dad isn't doing the best. I'll leave it at that. But his dad isn't doing the best either. And now this on top of it. So if anybody wants to help out, go to the Antlers on the 23rd, and they're also taking donated baskets or gift cards to auction off. That's all I got.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no one else in the room, we will go to Zoom. If anyone is into it, we do have one. Last minute.
Sorry, I know I don't really fit into public. I just wanted to get this out for all the board to consider is, I think that you're the right board because you're really thinking about this going in, but I just wanted to add in traffic pattern and security to one of your thought processes, because currently neither school has a good traffic pattern for student drop off from a security perspective, and it's going to get considerably worse if you just add more vehicles in. I have about 50 parents that drop off, 50 vehicles that drop off and pick up at the Valley. And more than that in staff cars that are sometimes there that would need to have room to park. And it's going to make all of that. And so, and the last part of that was looking forward, you as a district have been ahead of the game with security. You brought all of us on board and you're always forward thinking. You did the RVAT. Please try to think forward with security when you make this decision, because I doubt highly that the world's going to get safer. We're going to have to continuously upgrade security measures. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. We'll do here first and or you want to. All right, well, now we'll go to Zoom again. If anyone was interested in comment, please raise your hand. All right. Seeing no hands raised there. Do you want to?
Yeah, just a couple more things. To Mr. Snell's point, we will do that community engagement again, where we go out with an update on where we're at. I think we did five of these meetings last time. We would look to do the same through this process, whether it's just an update or a decision. I think that's important to keep the community involved. Second thing is the meritorious grant was approved. That's done, and we can start identifying the security items to purchase to get that done. The mental health one keeps bouncing back and forth. They didn't like therapy dogs, so I had to send dogs out of the grant. But that one will get approved. The key to that is a social worker and moving our current part-time outreach worker that we have through the county to full-time. So that should get approved tomorrow. And then the safety one was submitted on time. We could submit up to $450,000. I couldn't quite get there. I'm at $449,950. So we probably won't see all of them. Any bit helps. in continuing with safety and security. And I'll leave you on this good news, also at the March 12th board meeting, you will have an ag teacher, to approve for next school year. Noah Phillips, the kid we've been recruiting from Sullivan County, has accepted our offer. We are very excited to take him on. I extended it to him today because I needed his shirt size for a training we're sending him to, and I had no other way around asking him for a shirt size other than to offer him the position. I'm still gonna go out to see him teach. I want to know where he's gonna need some support and some effort on our part to make him successful out there. So that was really good news today, and thank you.
That's a big win.
Yes.
Yes, good. All right, hearing nothing else, I'll accept the motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. All right, all in favor?
I.
All opposed? All right, thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Go